Is America really the land of equal opportunity? This question is something that we've all pondered at some point or another. It's a question that sparks debate, fosters hope, and at times fuels disillusionment. We've grown up with narratives of the American dream, stories of individuals who rose from rags to riches through sheer determination and hard work. This is the America we've come to know, the America we've come to believe in. But let's peel back the layers of this perceived reality and delve into the realm of wealth inequality. It's a term we've heard before, but do we truly understand its implications? Wealth inequality, simply put, is the unequal distribution of assets within a population. And in the context of America, it paints a rather stark picture. Imagine a pie chart representing the total wealth in America. Now slice a very thin sliver, let's say 1%. This small slice represents the top 1% of the wealthiest households in America. Now imagine the rest of the pie, the remaining 99%. This corresponds to the wealth of the rest of the American population. This is no mere exaggeration. The top 1% of households in America hold a staggering amount of wealth, a concentration that has been growing for the past 4 decades. From the mid-70s to the present day, the share of wealth owned by the top 1% has nearly doubled, while the bottom 50% has seen their share of wealth steadily decline. This isn't a story of individual failure or lack of effort. Rather, it's a systemic issue, a grand delusion that we've been led to believe. We've been told that anyone can make it in America, that the wealth is spread evenly. But the reality is far from it. The American dream, it seems, is not so easily attainable for everyone. But what if what we believe isn't the whole truth? What if our perception of America as a land of equal opportunity is just a facade, a veneer masking a much deeper, more systemic issue? Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the perception versus reality in the next scene. How do you picture wealth distribution in America? We often imagine a balanced society where wealth is distributed fairly among the population. A society where the rich are somewhat richer than the average person, but not by an astronomical magnitude. Where the middle class occupies the largest portion of the wealth pie, and the poor, while they may have less, are not left with mere crumbs. This is the image that most people conjure up when they think of the American dream. However, let's bring in some infographics to paint a clearer picture. The reality is starkly different from our perception. In fact, it's not just a slight difference, it's a chasm. The wealth in America is not evenly distributed. The rich don't just have a little more, they have a lot more, a lot more. The top 1% of the population holds more than 40% of the total wealth. The next 9% holds another 35%. That leaves the remaining 90% of the population to share the leftovers, a mere 25% of the total wealth. And the middle class, that bulwark of the American dream, they are squeezed more than ever, their share of the wealth pie shrinking year by year. As for the poor, they are left with less than a sliver, a fraction so small it's barely visible on the graph. This is not the image we have in our minds, is it? The reality is a far cry from the perception. The wealth gap, the disparity between the rich and the poor, is not just a gap, it's a canyon, a vast, yawning chasm that seems to be growing wider every year. And yet, we cling to the idea of the American dream, the belief that anyone, regardless of their background, can make it big through hard work and determination. But when the distribution of wealth is so skewed, when the deck is so heavily stacked against the majority, one has to wonder, so is the American dream just that, a dream? Let's unravel the numbers behind the wealth inequality. To truly understand the depth of this issue, we must delve into the statistics that paint a vivid, albeit unsettling, picture of wealth distribution in America. The wealth gap as it stands is staggering. To illustrate, let's consider this. The top 10% of the wealthiest households in America own nearly 70% of the nation's total wealth. This leaves the remaining 90% of households to share the rest, a mere 30% of the wealth. Now let's zoom in on the upper echelons of that top 10%. The wealthiest 1% alone, an elite group, holds nearly 40% of the nation's total wealth. This skewed distribution is a stark indicator of the depth of wealth inequality in America. But what contributes to this inequality? One major factor is income inequality. The gap between the highest earners and the lowest earners has been widening for decades. This income disparity directly feeds into wealth inequality, as those with higher incomes are able to accumulate wealth more rapidly. Inheritance plays another significant part. Wealth tends to beget wealth, as those who inherit large sums are more likely to accumulate and grow their wealth, perpetuating the cycle of inequality. Systemic issues are also at play. These include discriminatory practices in housing and education, and tax policies that disproportionately favor the wealthy. These systemic barriers often prevent lower-income individuals from accumulating wealth, further exacerbating the wealth gap. As we dissect the statistics, it becomes clear that wealth inequality is not a mere coincidence or accident. It's a product of a series of factors, many deeply ingrained in our society, that have combined to create a wealth distribution vastly skewed towards the top. As the numbers reveal, the wealth gap is much wider than most people realize. It's a sobering reality that underscores the urgency of addressing wealth inequality in America. The question then becomes, what can we do to bridge this gap? What does this wealth gap mean for the average American? Well, let's explore this question together. The wealth gap isn't just an abstract concept or a series of bar graphs. It's a lived reality, affecting countless individuals and communities across the nation. The consequences of this inequality are far-reaching, shaping the lives of Americans in profound ways. Indeed, wealth inequality can stifle economic growth. When wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few, fewer people have the means to invest in businesses, buy homes, or contribute to the economy in other meaningful ways. This can lead to reduced economic activity and slower growth overall. The economic pie, so to speak, becomes stagnant and everyone's slice suffers as a result. Furthermore, social mobility, the very cornerstone of the American dream, is severely hampered by wealth inequality. When the wealth gap is wide, it becomes increasingly difficult for individuals to move up the economic ladder. The resources to invest in education, to take entrepreneurial risks, or to simply weather financial storms are disproportionately distributed, making it harder for those at the bottom to rise. And let's not overlook the stark reality of increased poverty. With wealth so unevenly distributed, many Americans find themselves living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to make ends meet. This isn't just about not having enough to splurge on luxuries. It's about families having to choose between paying the rent and buying groceries, about parents working multiple jobs just to provide the basics for their children. Wealth inequality also fosters social unrest and can lead to a breakdown of social cohesion. It can fuel feelings of resentment and disillusionment, creating divisions within society. This isn't just harmful for those on the receiving end of these inequities, it's detrimental to the fabric of society as a whole. Finally, let's remember that these are not mere hypotheticals or worst-case scenarios. These are the lived realities for many Americans, their lives shaped by the stark disparities in wealth that mark our nation. Wealth inequality isn't just about numbers, it affects real lives. So, what can we do to address wealth inequality? This is a question that has plagued economists and policymakers for years. Let's delve into some potential solutions that could make a difference. Firstly, progressive taxation is often touted as a key tool in addressing wealth inequality. In a nutshell, it's a system where those who earn more pay more in taxes. This doesn't mean that the wealthy are unduly penalized, but rather that they contribute proportionately to their income. This system is designed to help distribute wealth more evenly across society, and in turn, reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. Next, let's talk about wealth redistribution. It's a concept that often gets a bad rap, but it's not about taking from the rich to give to the poor. It's about ensuring that everyone has access to basic necessities and opportunities. Wealth redistribution can come in many forms, such as Social Security, food stamps, and housing assistance. These programs help to level the playing field and provide a safety net for those who need it most. Investment in education is another powerful tool in the fight against wealth inequality. By providing quality education for all, regardless of their socioeconomic status, we can help break the cycle of poverty and create a more equitable society. Education opens doors to better jobs and higher incomes, enabling individuals to climb the socioeconomic ladder. Finally, let's not forget about policies aimed at promoting financial literacy. Understanding how to manage money, invest wisely, and plan for the future can make a huge difference in an individual's financial well-being. By promoting financial literacy, we can empower people to take control of their financial destiny and consequently reduce wealth inequality. These are just some of the many ways we can begin to address wealth inequality. It's a complex issue that requires a multifaceted approach. But remember, every journey begins with a single step. As we continue to explore and implement these solutions, we can pave the way for a more equitable society. Change is possible, but it starts with understanding the problem. So let's keep the conversation going, let's keep learning, and let's make that change happen.